When talking about the nuclear attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in early August of 1945, one tends to gloss over how quickly the cities were rebuilt after the war. By February of the following year, the populations of both cities had returned to pre-bombing levels, and reconstruction of basic housing and necessities was already well underway. By the time the American occupation of Japan came to an end in 1952, just 7 years after the bombs, the devastated areas of both cities had been rebuilt with more modern infrastructure, and with the help of the Japanese economic miracle, life was returning to something vaguely resembling normalcy, if not prosperity. This is a testament to the Japanese spirit of stubborn perseverance unmatched on the world stage, and of its strong sense of cultural continuity, of looking at horrible destruction and getting right to work fixing what has been broken, making it even better than before. It's this spirit that cannot be broken, not by nuclear bombs, and not by giant radioactive monsters dredged out of the depths of the cultural imagination.
A new Godzilla has appeared off the coast of Osaka, but this time the beast is not alone. He squares off against the mighty Anguirus, and though the battling foes seem to have no interest in humanity, it doesn't take long for their ongoing conflict to reach the mainland, resulting in the near total destruction of one of Japan's greatest cities. In the aftermath, it is up to 2 fishing pilots, Tsukioka and Kobayashi, to track Godzilla and put an end to his deadly rampage.
When Toho president Iwao Mori returned from overseeing the production of Madame Butterfly in the closing months of 1954, he was delighted by the box office success of Godzilla, which had released in early November, and demanded of producer Tomoyuki Tanaka an immediate sequel to further cash in on its success. Godzilla's director, Ishiro Honda, who never even considered the possibility of a sequel, was not available at the time because he had gone to work on Love Tide. So, instead, Tanaka chose as director Motoyoshi Oda, a workhorse who moved fast, who was capable of adapting to virtually any genre, and who had just completed work on Toho's Invisible Man, aka the Invisible Avenger. Tanaka also pegged the screenwriter of Invisible Man, Shigeki Hidaka, to work with the original Godzilla writer Takeo Murata on the script. And just like that, Godzilla Raids Again was rushed into production on a budget of around 32 million yen, about half the budget of its predecessor. With the studio system still going strong in Japan, Toho was able to pull from a stable of serious actors for the cast. The only returning character is Dr. Yamane, once again played by Takashi Shimura, who only appears in one sequence, while the new lead of the picture, Tsukioka, is played by Hiroshi Koizumi, making his first of many appearances in the Toho Godzilla universe, although one of the few where he doesn't play some kind of scientist. Meanwhile, the female lead, the boss's daughter Hidemi, is played by Setsuko Wakayama, who had previously worked with Takashi Shimura on Snow Trail, but was probably best known for appearing in Toho's Jirocho Sengokushi film series. The third corner of the film's loose love triangle, the ill-fated Kobayashi, is played by Kurosawa regular Minoru Chiaki, who had already been in Seven Samurai, Ikiru, and Rashomon. Another Kurosawa staple who had appeared in Seven Samurai, Yoshio Tsuchiya, plays fighter pilot Tajima. As for Godzilla and his new opponent, the giant ankylosaurus Anguirus, they are played by Godzilla fixtures Haruo Nakajima and Katsumi Tezuka, respectively, both of whom had donned the Godzilla suit in the original film. For this movie, special effects coordinator Eiji Tsuburaya made lighter and more agile suits so that the two monsters could move more freely and have believable fights with each other. In addition to that, an accident during filming in which one of the cameras was undercranked resulted in sped-up footage that Tsuburaya kept in the final cut, either out of politeness to the poor camera assistant responsible, or because he genuinely liked the look of it. The latter is more likely, because for future kaiju films, Tsuburaya would continue to experiment with camera speeds to achieve different effects. In addition to doing extensive scouting in Osaka to ensure the miniatures would be as accurate as possible, they also opted to use real ice and snow for the climactic battle. It's worth remembering that in addition to having to jump headlong into the water when neither man could swim in their waterlogged suits, both Nakajima and Tezuka really did put their lives on the line for their performances. Akira Ifukube, who had composed the iconic Godzilla themes for the original film, was unavailable to return for the sequel, so the music was scored instead by the prolific Masaru Sato, who would later rise to prominence under Kurosawa. Sato's music is fine, but the composer was young and overworked, which shows, and there was little chance his score for Godzilla Raids Again could ever compare to Ifukube's original. Godzilla Raids Again, under a Japanese title that roughly translates to Godzilla's Counterattack, was released in Japan on April 24, 1955, just 6 months after it was ordered. While critical reviews weren't exactly kind to it, they were nicer than they had been to Godzilla, at least according to Ishiro Honda, who claimed that Japanese film critics preferred their genre movies to have less obvious subtext. The movie also did relatively well at the box office, earning roughly 170 million yen in theater rentals, but it wasn't considered successful enough by Toho to really launch Godzilla into the franchise it is today. Though everyone could see the potential of monster-on-monster action in future kaiju movies, Godzilla wouldn't return to the big screen for 7 years. In that time, Toho instead opted to create new monsters like Rodan and Mothra, monsters that would eventually go toe-to-toe with the big guy. The new monster of Godzilla Raids Again, Anguirus, would also eventually return to prominence, becoming a regular Godzilla ally and fan favorite. It's nothing short of criminal that Toho hasn't let Legendary use him in the Monsterverse yet. The American rights to Godzilla Raids Again were purchased by the same people who had made Godzilla King of the Monsters such an enormous success in the West. However, instead of filming a few inserts and splicing them into a dubbed version of the film as they had done for Godzilla, the plan for the sequel was to make a completely new American movie called The Volcano Monsters and splice in a handful of effects shots from Godzilla Raids Again. The Volcano Monsters got surprisingly far into pre-production. Toho even sent over the Godzilla and Anguirus suits for additional footage to be shot in America, before one of its primary financial backers went bankrupt, and as a result, Godzilla Raids Again didn't get an American release for a few more years. Perhaps as a holdover from the Volcano Monsters, the American dub renamed Godzilla Raids Again to Gigantis the Fire Monster, and altered the dialogue to make it seem as though it wasn't a sequel to Godzilla. I'm normally pretty forgiving of Americanized versions of Japanese films. I happen to think Godzilla King of the Monsters is great, for example, but Gigantis is, to be blunt, one of the worst Americanizations I've ever had the curse of viewing. The script makes no sense and contradicts itself, the stock footage is egregious, the voiceover narration by Key Luke is mind-numbingly constant and unnecessary.
The ominous drone of planes overhead gave us all a feeling of the size of the operation.
The stock music is awful, and some of the edits are downright baffling. I don't usually say this, but if you have the choice, definitely watch the subtitled Japanese version of the film, reserving the Americanized Gigantis for less sober entertainment purposes. This is because Godzilla Raids Again deserves to be judged on its own merits, and I think it gets a bad rap. Sure, the lack of Honda and Ifukube are painfully obvious, but as a sequel that was transparently made as little more than a cash grab, it's still a good movie that moves the fledgling kaiju film genre forward in permanent ways, if for no other reason than it introduces the idea of multiple giant monsters fighting each other. Its thematic depth is also overlooked far too easily, given how much less obvious it is than in the original Godzilla. As I mentioned in the introduction, this movie is about the unbreakable Japanese spirit of perseverance, even in the face of the most brutal disasters. When the cannery is destroyed along with most of Osaka, the characters spend very little time mourning their losses, and almost immediately get to work rebuilding, even able to laugh about their bright futures as they pick up the charred wreckage of their livelihood. This idea is infused throughout the story in a dozen different ways, and that's what I think this movie is celebrating. Taking the almost funereal dirge of Godzilla, whose reappearance is treated with just as much dread and somberness as before, and managing to turn it on its head. Even Kobayashi's sudden and frankly inexplicable death is a catalyst for victory, demonstrating to the survivors a way to not necessarily kill Godzilla, but to incapacitate and defeat him. In fact, the way the heroes exploit nature to end the conflict rather than relying on dangerous technology is an organic extension of Ishiro Honda's original themes, and it would indeed be copied by Honda during the climax of Rodan. But that's not the only way to look at Godzilla Raids Again. Another popular interpretation is that the movie is about August 9th, 1945. Two things happened on that day. One, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan, and two, the United States dropped the second atomic bomb. The Empire, still reeling from the effects of Hiroshima and stubbornly refusing to buckle, was thus faced with two enemies ready to trample its cities into dust, and it was this reality that finally convinced Emperor Hirohito to surrender. Granted, the metaphor falls apart when you consider that nobody surrenders to Godzilla and Anguirus in the movie, but the parallels between Godzilla Raids Again and the last battles of World War II are compelling enough on their own, a kind of cultural echo that resonates with the post-war Reconstruction era. Now, all that said, Godzilla Raids Again is by no means a great film. It's not even a particularly good Godzilla film, though it's certainly not the worst. The human characters are a bit underbaked, the pace is uneven, the acting is ho-hum, and both the reduced budget and rushed schedule are apparent in nearly every frame. However, Eiji Tsuburaya's effects are a huge leap forward, and this film is absolutely essential to understanding where Toho would take their new genre in the future. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. What sequel do you think gets too overshadowed by its predecessor? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thank you for watching, and until next time, when we'll find out what my Patreon members voted for last month, this is the Unapologetic Geek telling you to never be ashamed of what you love. As long as you're not hurting anybody.
I'm glad you're here. You're so brave, Tsukioka. Absolutely, darling.
Banana oil.